The ship Aurora Dawn glided through the endless dark of space, its hull reflecting the soft blue light of distant stars. Inside, everything was quiet except for the soft hum of engines and the low murmur of voices in the command deck. The Galactic Union's peace mission had reached its final stop, the royal world of Acheron. Leon stood near the viewport, hands behind his back, staring at the blue planet below. It was beautiful from orbit, rings of silver clouds, green oceans, and golden continents. He had seen many worlds during his service as a security officer, but none as strange as this one. The Acheron Empire was powerful, proud, and known for its strong emotions. They didn't trust humans easily. He sighed quietly. This was supposed to be a routine escort mission. Guard the royal family during peace talks, ensure safety, and go home. But the last message from command changed everything. "Sergeant Leon," said the transmission, "you have been reassigned as the personal guard of Princess Nira of Acheron." Leon had blinked at the message, unsure if he heard it right. The princess? Him? There were dozens of trained diplomatic guards on board, and yet they chose him, a human soldier who preferred rules and silence. He didn't argue, though. Orders were orders. Now, as the shuttle descended toward the palace city, he could already feel the tension ahead. The royal palace of Acheron was a structure of light and crystal. Floating towers shone like captured suns, and long silver bridges connected gardens that hung in the air. The guards at the gate wore armor that shimmered with energy fields. Everything seemed to hum with strange life. Leon walked behind the Union's ambassador, trying not to stare. His uniform was simple compared to the glittering attire of the aliens. The Acherons were tall, their skin faintly luminous with eyes that reflected light like gems. They looked almost fragile, but their strength was known across the galaxy. When the group stopped before the throne, the air seemed to thicken. The Acheron High Monarch sat tall, draped in robes of living fabric that changed color slowly. His voice echoed through the hall. "You are the human soldier chosen to guard my daughter?" he asked, his tone calm but sharp. Leon bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." "I am honored to serve." The monarch studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You may try. But know this, human, our princess is not easy to control." A soft laugh echoed behind him. Leon turned slightly and saw her for the first time. Princess Nira. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her hair shimmered like moonlight, and her eyes glowed faintly with shades of violet. She wore no crown, no heavy robe, just a simple silver dress that moved like water. There was a spark of mischief in her smile. "So this is my new guard," she said, tilting her head. He looked serious. Leon kept his face neutral. "I'm here to protect you, Your Highness." "Of course you are," she said, still smiling. "But can you keep up?" Before he could answer, she turned and walked away with a graceful wave of her hand. The ambassador gave him a nervous look as if to say, "Good luck." Leon followed quietly, already realizing that his job was going to be harder than expected. The princess's quarters were large enough to fit an entire human training hall. Floating lights hovered in the air, and the floor reflected soft patterns of light. Leon stood at the doorway as she walked around the room, humming a tune. "You can relax, human," she said without looking back. "No one will attack me here. It's my duty to remain alert, princess." She laughed softly. "Duty, duty, duty." Humans love that word. Leon didn't answer. He simply scanned the room, noting the exits and security panels. She watched him quietly, her violet eyes curious. "Tell me something," she said finally. "Why did they send a human to guard me? Don't they have their own soldiers?" "I don't ask questions, Your Highness," he said. "I follow orders." She murmured, tapping her chin. "That's boring." He glanced at her. "It keeps me alive." She smiled again, this time softer. "Maybe. But you'll find that life on Acheron is not about survival, it's about living." He didn't know what to say to that, so he simply nodded. She walked toward the balcony and looked out at the glowing city below. "The stars look different from here," she said quietly. "Brighter, colder. Do they look different to you too?" Leon stepped beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Stars look the same everywhere, princess. It's the ground that changes." Nira looked at him with that same curious light in her eyes. "You speak like a philosopher, not a soldier." "I've had time to think," he said simply. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind whispered through the balcony, carrying a faint floral scent. It was almost peaceful until he noticed something strange. The small device on his wrist flickered red. Her tracking beacon was gone. He turned sharply. "Princess?" But she was no longer standing beside him. Leon's training kicked in instantly. He scanned the room, checked the door, then the balcony. No sign of her. She had vanished. He activated his scanner and traced faint energy trails. Acheron teleportation tech used only by royals. His jaw tightened. She had escaped. Within 10 minutes, he was moving through the palace gardens, his boots silent on the glowing pathways. The air was filled with drifting lights and soft music, but he ignored the beauty around him. He followed the faint trace her beacon left behind, leading deeper into the outer gardens. "Princess Nira," he said through the comm, keeping his voice calm, "you've left your secured area. Please respond." Static, he sighed. "Of course." He moved faster, turning a corner, and froze. She was sitting casually on the edge of a fountain, legs crossed, tossing a small glowing fruit into the air and catching it again. When she saw him, she grinned. That was quick. Leon walked closer, but his tone stayed firm. "You shouldn't be out here alone, Princess." "I wasn't alone. The stars are with me," she said with a teasing smile. "You humans really don't understand freedom, do you?" "This area isn't secure," he said. "If anyone sees you, then they'll see a princess enjoying the night," she interrupted. "Relax, human. No one will harm me here." "It's not about you," he said quietly. "It's about what others might do because of you." Her smile faded just a little. She looked at him carefully. "You really believe danger hides behind everything, don't you?" "It usually does," he said. For a moment she seemed thoughtful. Then her mischievous smile returned. "Then perhaps I should escape more often. You seem more alive when you're chasing me." Leon blinked, unsure if she was joking. "That's not part of my job description." "Maybe it should be," she said softly. He opened his mouth to reply, but before he could, her personal guards appeared from the shadows. They bowed deeply. "Your Highness, you must return immediately. The council will be furious," Nira sighed dramatically. Yes. Take me back." She looked at Leon as she stood. "Don't look so serious, human. You caught me, didn't you?" "I'm not sure that's something to be proud of," he said dryly. She laughed as they walked away. "It is for me." Later that night, after she was safely back in her chambers, Leon stood outside the door thinking about the strange turn his day had taken. He had guarded diplomats, soldiers, even planetary governors, but never someone like her. She wasn't cruel or arrogant like the rumors said. She was curious, playful, unpredictable. And behind her teasing eyes there was something else. A quiet loneliness, perhaps, hidden beneath the royal pride. He looked up at the stars beyond the glass roof. This mission was supposed to be simple. Keep her safe, follow orders, stay invisible. But something told him this assignment was going to be anything but simple. He didn't know yet that the next time she escaped, it wouldn't be for fun. It would be the moment that changed both their worlds forever. The next morning, Leon was already standing at his post outside the princess's chamber, before the first rays of Acheron's twin suns touched the palace windows. His uniform was spotless, his stance straight, his face calm. He had barely slept. The events of the previous night kept repeating in his mind. How easily she had escaped, how casually she had played with rules, and how strange it felt when she smiled at him, as if she was testing more than just his skills. The door slid open, and Princess Nira stepped out wearing a soft blue robe that shimmered faintly in the morning light. Her eyes were bright with mischief, and she smiled when she saw him. "You're early," she said cheerfully. "I was assigned to guard you," Leon said simply. "That means I start before you wake and finish after you sleep." "That sounds exhausting," she said with mock concern. "Humans must really enjoy suffering for duty." "It's called responsibility, Princess," he replied calmly. She tilted her head and smiled. "Then I hope you're ready for another long day of responsibility." He didn't like the tone in her voice, but before he could ask, she walked away down the corridor, her steps light and graceful. Leon followed at a steady pace, maintaining a respectful distance. The palace was buzzing with life. Diplomats and envoys moved through glowing halls, and servants carried trays of floating crystal dishes. Nira's schedule was full: meetings, ceremonies, and public appearances. But she didn't seem interested in any of it. During her morning audience with the council, she leaned toward Leon and whispered, "Do you ever get bored standing there all day?" "Never," he said quietly. She smirked. "That's a lie." He ignored her teasing. When she realized he wouldn't respond, She turned her attention back to the meeting, pretending to listen while twirling a silver ribbon between her fingers. As soon as the council session ended, she stood up and stretched. That was painfully dull. Let's do something interesting. Princess, Leon began carefully. Your next event can wait, she interrupted, flashing a grin. I want to see the lower gardens. That area is restricted. To royals only under escort, he said. Then, escort me, she replied lightly, and walked toward the exit. He sighed quietly and followed. The lower gardens were unlike anything Leon had ever seen. Giant flowers glowed softly, and streams of silver water ran through transparent stones. Strange creatures with delicate wings drifted through the air. The beauty of it all made him stop for a moment. Nira smiled at his reaction. Even your calm human face can't hide wonder. Do you like it? It's peaceful, he admitted. This place was built to remind us that beauty needs protection, she said softly. My ancestors believed peace could grow only in places that felt alive. He looked around. It feels alive, yes. Nira turned toward him, her expression thoughtful. Do humans believe in peace, Leon? He hesitated. We try. But peace for humans usually comes after a long fight. Strange, she said. Most species fear fighting. Humans seem to respect it. It's not the fight itself, he explained. It's what we protect that matters. She watched him quietly, and for a moment her teasing tone disappeared. You speak differently from other guards I've had. You think too much. I was trained to observe, not talk. Then maybe you should stop training for a while, she said with a small smile. Life isn't only about orders, Leon didn't answer. But before he could think of something to say, she suddenly looked away and vanished. It happened so fast that even his scanner took a second to react. One moment she was there, standing near the glowing trees, and the next she was gone, leaving behind only a faint shimmer of light. Leon tapped his communicator. Command, this is Sergeant Leon. Princess Nira has left the secured zone using personal teleportation. Activating tracking protocols. Understood, came the calm voice from the control room. We're sending a scan of her last known coordinates. Proceed with caution. He moved quickly through the garden, scanning for residual energy. The trace led out toward the city edge near the floating market district, a place full of aliens, traders, and curious onlookers. He sighed softly. Of course she'd go there. The market was chaos. Dozens of alien species walked between hovering stalls. Music echoed from every corner, and the air was filled with the smell of fruit and metal. Leon moved through the crowd carefully, scanning every signal. Then he heard a familiar voice. Leon! You found me again. He turned sharply and saw her standing near a group of street performers, clapping her hands and smiling like a child. Her royal glow made her stand out immediately. Several people nearby had already noticed. Princess, he said quietly but firmly, walking toward her. You're drawing attention. She only laughed. That's the point. Sometimes attention is fun. He stopped beside her, keeping his voice low. This is not a game. Oh, but it is, she said, eyes sparkling. You chase, I run. You find me, I smile. It keeps life exciting. He exhaled slowly, trying not to sound frustrated. If someone recognizes you as the royal heir, it could cause panic or worse. Her smile softened slightly. You're worried about me. I'm responsible for you, he corrected. She stepped a little closer. Is that the only reason? Leon stayed silent. The question lingered between them, unspoken but heavy. Before he could answer, a loud mechanical hum echoed through the market. A hovercraft swept down from the sky, painted black, no royal markings. Leon's instinct screamed danger. Get behind me, he ordered immediately. Nira blinked, startled. What's happening? Possible threat, he said, drawing his compact energy weapon. Stay close. A group of masked aliens jumped from the craft, weapons drawn. The crowd scattered in panic. Leon moved fast, pushing Nira behind a stall for cover as blaster fire flashed through the air. He aimed and fired twice, hitting one of the attackers in the shoulder. The others retreated behind cover, shouting in a language he didn't recognize. Who are they? Nira asked, her voice trembling slightly. Doesn't matter, he said. You need to move now. He grabbed her hand and led her through the maze of stalls. Explosions echoed behind them. When they reached an alley, he turned sharply, scanning the rooftops. Command, he said through his communicator. We're under attack near the lower market. Multiple hostiles, possibly targeting the princess. Request extraction. Extraction on the way, came the reply. Hold position for 2 minutes. 2 minutes. It felt like forever. Leon looked around for a secure spot and found a narrow passage between 2 buildings. He guided Nira inside. She looked shaken but still tried to smile. I thought humans liked excitement, she said weakly. Not this kind, he replied. She nodded slowly. You saved me. That's my job. Her voice softened. Still, thank you. They stayed silent for a moment as the sound of engines grew closer. Union security drones appeared overhead, scattering the remaining attackers. The extraction shuttle landed nearby and Leon escorted her aboard. Back at the palace, chaos awaited them. The High Monarch stood at the entrance, his face unreadable. Where was she? He demanded. In the market district, Your Majesty, Leon answered honestly. Hostiles attacked. We secured her safely. The monarch's voice was cold. How did she end up there, human? Leon started to speak, but Nira stepped forward. It wasn't his fault. I left on my own. The room fell silent. The monarch's gaze softened slightly as he looked at his daughter. You risked your life for curiosity again. She lifted her chin. I wanted to see the city. I didn't expect. You expected nothing, and yet danger found you, he interrupted firmly. You will remain in your chambers until further notice. She opened her mouth to argue but stopped when she saw the disappointment in his eyes. When the monarch left, Nira turned to Leon. You could have blamed me. I don't blame people, he said simply. I prevent accidents, she smiled faintly. And save foolish princesses. Only if they let me. Her smile turned gentle. Then you'll have to keep trying. I don't escape because I want freedom, you know. He looked at her curiously. Then why? She hesitated, then said softly, because the palace feels like a cage, and sometimes you chase me like you actually see me, not just the title. Leon didn't know what to say. He stood in silence as she turned toward her window. Outside, the stars shimmered again. For the first time, he realized this wasn't just about guarding a royal. It was about understanding her. And maybe, he thought quietly, it was also about understanding what it meant to be human, through the eyes of someone who wasn't. For 3 days, the palace remained quiet. No alarms, no missing princess, no late-night chasing through glowing corridors. Leanne almost found it suspicious. Princess Nira had been unusually calm since the attack. She attended meetings, stayed in her chambers, and spoke politely to everyone. To the court, it seemed like she had finally learned her lesson, but Leon knew better. He had been stationed outside her door day and night, and sometimes he could hear her pacing, sometimes humming softly, sometimes silent for hours. She was thinking, planning something perhaps. Still, part of him was relieved that she was safe. The memory of the market attack stayed fresh in his mind. He could still hear the echo of the gunfire, see the fear in her eyes when the blasts came too close. He had faced danger many times before, but that moment had been different, because this time, someone's life truly depended on him. On the 4th evening, she finally spoke to him again. He stood at his post, motionless as always, when her door slid open and she stepped out. She wore a plain silver dress, her hair loose, and her eyes were thoughtful rather than mischievous. "Leon," she said softly. He straightened immediately. "Yes, princess?" "Come inside." "I want to talk," he hesitated. Guards didn't usually enter royal chambers unless summoned for protection. "Is something wrong?" "No," she said, smiling faintly. "That's the problem. Nothing is wrong. And I'm tired of silence." He nodded and stepped inside. Her room was peaceful and quiet, filled with soft lights and the gentle sound of wind chimes. She sat on a chair by the balcony and gestured for him to sit across from her. "I want to ask you something," she said, "but promise you'll answer honestly." "I'll try, princess. Why did you save me that day?" He frowned slightly. "Because it's my duty." Her eyes narrowed playfully. "That's the answer of a soldier. I want the answer of a human." He thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Because I couldn't let you die." "Why?" she asked again. "You hardly knew me." "Because life is valuable," he said simply. "Doesn't matter whose." She leaned forward, studying him. "That's strange. Most species protect their own kind first. You risked your life for someone outside your race." "That's what humans do sometimes," he said. "We protect others even when it doesn't make sense. Maybe it's foolish, but it's what we are." Nira smiled slowly. You call it foolish. I call it beautiful. After that night, their conversations became frequent. Sometimes she would ask about Earth, about its oceans, forests, and skies. Leon told her about rain that smelled of soil, about wind that howled through canyons, about cities that never slept. Other times she asked about human emotions. What does fear feel like? She asked once. What about love? He tried to answer honestly, though his words always felt too small. Fear makes your heart race, he said. Love makes it calm again. She laughed softly at that. So you fight wars for fear and peace for love? Something like that, he said with a faint smile. Their talk stretched long into the night. For the first time since his arrival, Leon found himself lowering his guard, not as a soldier, but as a person. He started to understand why the princess escaped so often. The palace, with all its light and perfection, was a cage. It was beautiful, yes, but it had walls. Walls built not from stone, but from rules and expectations. And maybe in her own way, Nira was just trying to breathe. One morning, she asked him to join her for a walk through the royal gardens. The air was fresh and filled with the scent of strange flowers. As they walked, she said, You humans are different. How so? He asked. You live shorter lives than most species, yet you live them so fiercely. You make art, music, stories. You laugh even when your world burns. I've read reports about your wars, your struggles, and still you smile. He nodded. It's because we don't want to waste time being afraid. She looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe that's why the Union trusts humans. You remind them that peace is fragile and that it's worth protecting. Leon said nothing. He just walked beside her, watching the sunlight reflect in her eyes. That afternoon, an urgent message arrived from the Galactic Union base. The council wanted a full security report from all guards assigned to the royal family. Leon spent hours preparing his statement, reviewing the market attack data. When he finished, he found a small note waiting on his desk, a handwritten one. Rare in these times, it said simply, Meet me at the upper observatory after sunset. Nira. He sighed softly but smiled a little. She was breaking the rules again. But at least this time she wasn't disappearing without a trace. The observatory was quiet and breathtaking. Transparent domes opened to the night sky, showing endless stars above. Nira stood near the edge, looking up at the constellations. I knew you'd come, she said without turning. Because you ordered me to, he said dryly. She laughed softly. No, because you care. He said nothing. The stars reflected in her eyes as she turned to face him. Do you ever wonder how small we are? She asked. All these stars, millions of worlds, millions of lives. Yet we act like everything revolves around us. Humans think about that often, he said quietly. But instead of feeling small, we use it as a reason to try harder. She smiled. You're always trying to prove something, aren't you? Maybe, he said. Maybe we just want to be remembered. She stepped closer. And what do you want to be remembered for, Leon? He thought for a moment. For doing my duty. For keeping people safe. She shook her head gently. That's not enough. You should want to live too. I live through purpose, he said. She gave a small sigh. You humans and your duty. It's both your strength and your weakness. Then she looked back at the stars. But I like that about you. The silence between them was soft and peaceful. For a few moments, Leon forgot the rules, the ranks, the difference between soldier and princess. They were just two beings under the same sky, sharing a quiet wonder. But the peace didn't last. Suddenly, the dome lights dimmed. A warning symbol flashed on the security panel near the wall. Leon moved instantly to the console, checking the readings. What is it? Nira asked, startled. Unauthorized movement near the outer towers, he said. Could be nothing, but we should go back. Before they could move, the floor trembled slightly. A low vibration filled the air. Leon's instincts screamed danger again. Stay behind me, he said firmly. A section of the observatory window shimmered, and then shattered. A black drone shot through the opening, firing a stun pulse. Leon shoved Nira aside, dodging the blast, and drew his weapon in one smooth motion. He fired twice. The first shot hit the drone's sensor. The second destroyed it completely. Sparks rained across the floor. Nira's eyes were wide. How did it find us? I don't know, he said, scanning the fragments. But someone's watching the palace more closely than we thought. He contacted command immediately. Within minutes, security drones surrounded the observatory. Later that night, after the investigation ended, Nira sat quietly in her chamber. Leon stood guard nearby, still alert. When the royal council left, she turned to him. "You risked your life again." He shrugged slightly. "It's my job," she frowned. "You always say that, but it's not true. You could have let the security drones handle it. But you didn't." He looked at her and said simply, "Because I was there." Her expression softened. "You really are different from the others." "Different doesn't mean better," he said. "It does when it saves someone," she replied softly. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then she smiled again, gentler than before. "You know, Leon, when I first met you, I thought humans were dull. But you surprise me every day." He didn't know how to answer that, so he just nodded. As she turned back toward the window, she said quietly, "I don't escape to make trouble anymore. I escape because I want to understand your kind, and maybe understand myself." He watched her reflection in the glass, the faint glow of her skin, the way her eyes softened at the stars. "Then maybe one day," he said, "you won't need to escape to feel free." She smiled, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe one day I won't have to." Outside, the twin moons rose slowly, casting silver light across the palace. Inside, two figures stood in silence. One human, one alien, both realizing that their connection had begun to mean more than either expected. The palace was quieter than usual that night. The soft hum of the energy fields and the faint glow of floating lanterns painted long shadows across the crystal floors. Leon patrolled silently, his senses alert. After the recent drone attack, he knew danger could strike at any time. The princess had survived, but he refused to let her face such risks again. Princess Nira, for her part, seemed unusually calm. She had spent the evening studying the constellations from her balcony, speaking softly to Leon about stars and human stories. For once, she hadn't tested him, hadn't escaped, but peace was only a brief visitor in the palace. A faint vibration passed through the floor, a subtle, almost unnoticeable tremor. Leon's training reacted instantly. His hand went to the communicator. "Command, this is Sergeant Leon. I'm detecting unusual movement in the West Wing, requesting immediate backup." Static. Then, acknowledged. Reinforcements en route. He moved swiftly toward the princess's chambers, scanning every hallway. The air felt different, charged with tension, like something was watching them. When he reached her door, it was slightly ajar. Leon's heart tightened. "Princess?" he called softly. No response. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was empty. His eyes immediately caught a faint shimmer near the balcony. Teleportation traces. Someone had breached the room. "Princess Nira!" he shouted. Before he could react, a shadow moved outside the window. Leon jumped to the edge, catching the figure before it fell from the balcony. It was one of the palace intruders, a humanoid wearing dark armor, eyes glowing faint red. The figure lunged at him, weapon raised. Leon dodged, pulling his compact blaster and firing a precise shot. The weapon hit the attacker in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. The princess's voice rang out from behind. "Leon, be careful." He spun and saw Nira stepping onto the balcony, her small hands glowing with energy. She activated her personal shield, protecting them both as more intruders appeared. "Step back," Leon commanded. "Stay behind me." The attackers regrouped quickly, firing energy pulses. Leon moved with calculated precision, covering the princess, keeping their enemies at bay. Every shot, every step was measured, but the odds were growing. One of the intruders advanced from the side, aiming directly at Nira. Without thinking, Leon lunged, pushing her out of the way just as a pulse struck the balcony floor. Sparks flew and part of the floor cracked. Nira stumbled but caught herself, her shield flickering weakly. She looked at him, eyes wide with something he had never seen before, gratitude mixed with admiration. "You risked yourself for me," she said, voice steady despite the chaos. "Always," he replied, eyes scanning the enemies. Using the balcony as cover, Leon signaled for Nira to follow him through the palace corridors. They moved quickly, avoiding detection, until they reached the grand hall. There, the intruders had split up, some heading toward the throne room. others into side corridors. Leon grabbed Nira's hand. "We need to reach the secure wing," he said. "Can you keep up?" "Try to keep up with me," she teased, her usual playful tone returning despite the danger. He smirked briefly, appreciating her resilience, and they sprinted through the halls. The princess's energy shield flickered as she kept pace, her hands glowing faintly in rhythm with her steps. Every corner, every turn could hide danger. Leon's mind worked fast, mapping escape routes, scanning for hidden attackers, predicting movements. He had faced many enemies before, but never like this. These attackers were clever, coordinated, and relentless. They reached the secure wing, a series of corridors and chambers reinforced with the palace's strongest energy barriers. Leon keyed in the access codes and the doors slid open. "Inside," he said, ushering Nira in. She leaned against the wall, catching her breath, her eyes scanning the room for threats. "Do you ever rest, human?" she asked with a faint smile. "Only when the princess is safe," he replied without hesitation. Her smile softened. "You really are different. No other guard would put themselves in front of me like that." "It's my job," he said, though she didn't seem convinced. As they settled into the secure wing, alarms suddenly blared. Leon froze, scanning the security readouts. More intruders were approaching, heading directly for the palace core. "They're after more than you," he said grimly. "They want the crown." The princess's eyes widened. "The crown?" "Yes. If they succeed, the entire empire could be destabilized, and that would mean war." Nira stepped closer to him, her hand brushing his shoulder lightly. "Then we must stop them together." Leon looked at her, surprised by her courage. "Are you sure? You've already used up most of your shield power." "I've never run from a challenge," she said simply. "Besides, I trust you." His heart skipped a beat. He had faced death many times, but never with someone like her. Someone who relied on him not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The next minutes were a blur of action. Leon and Nira moved through the palace, disabling attackers with precision. Leon's blaster fired in controlled bursts, while Nira used her shields creatively, blocking corridors, pushing enemies back, and creating paths for escape. At one point, Leon's foot caught on a loose tile and he stumbled. Nira reacted instantly, grabbing his arm and pulling him back just as an energy pulse exploded where he had stood. "Careful, human," she said, her eyes serious but calm. "I won't let anything happen to you either." "I don't need protection," he replied, though he didn't move away from her. "You do," she said softly. "And I won't let pride stop me from helping you." Finally, they reached the central chamber, where the intruders had gathered. Their leader, a tall figure in black armor, eyes glowing crimson, stood near the royal crown holding a strange device that pulsed with energy. "This ends now," Leon said firmly. The leader laughed. "You humans think you can stop us? Your species is weak, and your princess is nothing without her palace guards." Nira stepped forward, her hands glowing brighter. "You're wrong. I am not nothing. And this human, he is stronger than you imagine." Leon felt a surge of pride, not from being praised, but because the princess recognized his courage and determination. The battle was intense. Leon moved with precision, dodging attacks, disabling weapons, and protecting Nira at every step. She used her shields creatively, deflecting energy blasts, creating barriers, and even pushing enemies back. Their coordination surprised even him. For the first time, he realized that humans and Asurans could fight together, not as different species, but as allies. Each move, each decision, was based on trust. Finally, with a combination of human precision and Asuran energy manipulation, they defeated the intruders. The leader was disarmed and captured, and the palace's core secured. Nira exhaled, her shield fading slowly. "We did it," she said softly, almost in disbelief. "Yes," Leon said, lowering his weapon. "We did." Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Nira looked at Leon with a new respect. "I've underestimated humans," she said, You aren't just strong, you're brave and steady. He shook his head. I'm just doing my job. She stepped closer. No, that was more than duty. You protected me when no one else could or would. That makes you special. Leon didn't respond. Words felt small compared to what had happened. Instead, he simply watched her, realizing that this mission had become far more than guarding a princess. For the first time, he understood that courage, trust, and connection weren't limited to one species. Humans had heart, and perhaps that heart could change worlds. Nira smiled faintly, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight from the window. Next time, she said softly, I won't escape to test you. I might escape to fight beside you. Leon allowed himself a small smile. I think I could handle that. The palace was quiet again, but neither of them forgot the events of the night. Shadows had passed through their halls, testing their courage, and they had faced them together. And in that moment, Leon realized that protecting the princess wasn't just about keeping her alive. It was about standing with her, understanding her, and proving that humans were capable of far more than anyone had ever imagined. The palace was unusually still in the early hours of the morning. Twin moons of Azeron cast pale silver light across the crystal floors, painting long reflections of towers and statues. Leon moved silently through the hallways, his senses alert. For the past few days, he had seen the princess grow stronger, more confident and yet more daring. Princess Nira, however, had not returned to her usual playful self. The recent intruder attack had reminded her that even her powers had limits, and that some threats could not be ignored. Tonight she was waiting for him in her chamber, calm but resolute. Leon, she said as he entered, I've made a decision. He raised an eyebrow. Decision? I want you to remain by my side, not just as a guard, she said softly. I trust you more than anyone else in this palace. You've proven yourself, through courage, through honesty, and through your heart. Leon felt a strange weight in his chest. He had faced countless battles, but the emotions in her words were unlike anything he had experienced. Princess, my duty, he began, but she held up a hand. Duty isn't everything, she said firmly. Sometimes it's about choosing who you trust and standing together. That is why I want you by my side. He simply nodded, unable to find words. The next day, the Royal Council gathered to discuss the aftermath of the attack. The Azeron High Monarch, dignified and commanding, turned his gaze toward Leon. You are the human responsible for protecting my daughter, he said. Explain why she was targeted and how it was resolved. Leon reported calmly, detailing the attackers, the chase, and how he and Nira had defended the palace. He emphasized the teamwork between them without embellishment. The council murmured among themselves. Some were skeptical, others impressed. The High Monarch's expression remained unreadable until Nira stepped forward. She is right, she said, voice clear and unwavering. Leon is not just a guard. He saved me, protected the palace, and showed courage beyond anyone else here. He is my choice. He will remain by my side. The council was silent, astonished by her confidence. Murmurs filled the hall. The idea of a human remaining so closely connected to the royal family was unusual, unprecedented even, but the princess's authority and unwavering trust made it clear. Very well, the monarch said finally, a small hint of approval in his tone. He will stay. You may continue your duty, human. Leon bowed deeply. Thank you, your majesty. Later, when the council had dispersed, Nira approached him with her usual mischievous grin. You could have been dismissed, she said softly. Instead, you're here. You survived my tests and you protected me. That makes you irreplaceable. Princess, Leon said quietly. I was just doing my duty. You call it duty, she replied, stepping closer. But I call it courage. Humans like you remind me why the universe is worth fighting for. Leon felt his heart tighten. For days he had wondered why she kept testing him, why she kept escaping and smiling. Now he realized it was more than mischief. It was curiosity and perhaps trust. Weeks passed. Peace returned to the palace. Nira's schedule resumed, meetings, ceremonies, and public appearances. But she found time to walk with Leon in the gardens, discuss the stars, and share small private moments. The bond between them grew quietly. Leon had learned to understand her moods, her curiosity, and her quiet moments of vulnerability. Nira had learned to trust him in ways no one else could. One evening, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking the glowing city, Nira said softly, "Do you ever wonder if humans are special?" Leon looked at her surprised. "Why do you ask?" "Because you show courage, loyalty, and heart," she said, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "No other species I've met can do that in the same way. You're unpredictable and yet dependable." "That is rare," he smiled faintly. "I suppose humans try their best." "You don't just try," she said. "You act. That's what makes you remarkable." For a moment, silence stretched between them, filled with understanding rather than words. The bond they had formed over trials and danger had become more than duty. It had become mutual respect, trust, and a quiet connection that neither could deny. One afternoon, a message arrived from the Galactic Union headquarters. It congratulated Leon for his exceptional service and bravery, highlighting his ability to protect the princess and assist in maintaining the palace's security. The recognition was gratifying, but for Leon, it was secondary. His greatest reward was simple: the trust and respect of Princess Nira. That evening, as they walked through the palace gardens under glowing trees and floating lanterns, Nira spoke again. "Do you know why I kept escaping at first?" Leon shook his head. "Because you wanted to test me." She laughed softly. "Partly, but also because I wanted to see if humans are truly as extraordinary as the legends say. You've proven that you are." He stopped walking, surprised by the sincerity in her eyes. I didn't expect to be tested like that." "You didn't fail," she said simply. "You showed me why humans can inspire loyalty and trust. That's why I want you here with me." Weeks turned into months. Leon's role evolved from a silent protector to a trusted companion, advisor, and friend. He trained with Nira, assisted her in her studies, and explored the palace with her, uncovering hidden corners and forgotten archives. The palace staff had grown accustomed to the unusual partnership. Some still whispered about the human who had earned the princess's trust, but others admired him. Even the council had begun to see that his presence strengthened the royal household. One day, while walking through the upper gardens, Nira stopped and looked at him with her usual sparkle. "You know, human," she said, "you're no longer just a guard. You've become irreplaceable." Leon felt a small smile tug at his lips. "I suppose I've earned that title." "Not by duty alone," she said. "By heart, by courage, and by standing with me when it mattered most." He nodded. "Then I will continue to do so. Always." It was late at night when an unexpected visitor arrived, a courier from a distant system with urgent news. A minor threat in the outer sectors had been neutralized, and thanks to intelligence provided by Leon and Nira, the Union had avoided a potential conflict. The princess looked at him with pride. "You see, even the stars acknowledge human courage." Leon shook his head, smiling faintly. "I'm just doing what I can." "You're doing more than that," she said softly. "You're showing everyone that humans are capable of greatness. That is something no technology or power can replace." He felt warmth in his chest. He had faced countless dangers, traveled across stars, and protected people he barely knew. But this acknowledgement, this recognition, felt deeper than any medal or commendation. Months later, during a quiet evening, Nira turned to him and whispered with a playful smile, "You know, I could escape again tomorrow." "Just for fun?" Leon raised an eyebrow. "I suppose that would make my day interesting." She leaned slightly closer. "Or dangerous?" He looked at her, the glow of her skin reflecting the moonlight. "With you, it's always a little of both." She laughed softly, and for a moment everything else faded. The palace, the stars, the worries of the galaxy. Two beings stood together under the silver moons, connected by courage, trust, and something more profound than either of them could explain. "Next time," she said quietly, "maybe I'll take you with me." "Then I will follow," he replied, voice calm but steady. "Anywhere?" Nira smiled, leaning back to look at the stars once more. "Good, because there are still many things in the galaxy I want to show you." He felt a surge of resolve. No matter what challenges the future held, he would be there, for her, for the palace, and for humanity. His courage, his heart, and his loyalty had earned a place he never expected, beside a princess, facing the universe together. The palace was calm once more, but the bond they shared had changed everything. In the end, it wasn't only about protection, it was about proving that humans, with their courage and heart, could inspire, endure, and even change worlds. And as the twin moons rose higher in the sky, Leon knew one thing for certain: he would never leave Nira's side.